All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Loki is making another appearance. I know he wasn't in the last couple videos, so here he is for this one. So this video is going to be a part 2 of the Enneagram video I made. The video I made first was an intro to the Enneagram system. If you're new to Enneagram and you haven't seen that first video, go ahead and check that out first, because the content I go over in this one isn't going to really make much sense. It's going to be hard to follow if you haven't seen that first one, so go ahead and do that. And besides that, let's get right into it. So one thing I should have talked about in the first video that for some reason I forgot to was the passions or vices for the 9 types. So each type has a unique vice, often referred to as a passion. Vice is the opposite of virtue, so it's a bad thing, a negative thing. It's sort of the thematic sin of each type. So for the type 1, it is anger or wrath. For type 2, the vice is pride. For type 3, vanity or deceit. For type 4, envy. Type 5's vice is avarice or greed. The vice for type 6 is fear or doubt. For 7, it's gluttony. For 8, it's lust. For 9, sloth or comfort. And the word comfort might not have a negative connotation, but the negative meaning behind that is that they can tend to fall into what's comfortable, and it prevents them from growing or doing what they should do to help themselves or to help others. And in the previous Enneagram video, I talked about tritypes. And so basically a summary of that is a tritype is a combination of 3 of the number types, 1 from each of the 3 triads, so gut, heart, and head. And the example I used as one of the tritypes was 3, 6, 9, and that's only one of 27 of the tritypes. There's 27 combinations of tritypes. Obviously, it would take way too long to describe each of the 27 different tritypes, so I'm not going to do that. But I will say that determining a person's tritype, so looking at which type they are in each of the 3 triads, is often a very helpful way of determining what a person's core type might be. So narrowing it down to 3 different types might make it a lot easier to see what their core type is. So that could be an easier way of typing someone. And I also want to dive a little bit deeper into the instinctual variants, which I also touched on in my previous video. So as a summary, there's 3 different instinctual variants, and they each indicate where a person instinctively places most of their focus. And the 3 were self-preservation, or SP, sexual, or SX, and social, or SO. As I mentioned in my previous video, the 3 instinctual variants serve as subtypes for each of the 9 types, creating a total of 27 subtypes. And you can create an even more specific subtyping by including 2 of the 3 instincts in order of preference. And these are generally listed with just the top 2 instincts, with the 3rd instinct being implied as being the last instinct used. And this is called instinctual variant stacking. And the instinctual variant stacking has a very strong impact on the behavioral manifestations of each type. And it can in fact make a type look like a different type altogether. For example, a type 1 with a self-preservation social instinct will look very different than a type 1 with sexual self-preservation instinct stacking. And each of the 9 types has a instinctual variant that's considered its countertype. And what that is it's the instinctual variant that is contradictory to the nature of the type. It can make a person of one type look like a different type altogether. And here's the countertypes for each of the 9 types. For type 1, it's sexual. For 2, self-preservation. For 3, self-preservation. For 4, self-preservation. 5, sexual. 6, sexual. 7, social. 8, social. And 9, social. Enneagram also has a concept called growth and stress patterns, also often referred to as integration/disintegration patterns. And when you look at the Enneagram symbol, you see lines connecting the different types. And for each type, there's a line connecting it to 2 other types. And this particular Enneagram symbol has arrows. And you can see that each type has 1 arrow pointing away from it to another type, and 1 arrow pointing towards it from another type. So the direction of the arrow indicates the direction of growth or integration, whereas the reverse direction would be the stress or disintegration direction. So what this means is that when a type is undergoing stress or undergoing a concept called disintegration, as Enneagram calls it, they will start to look like a different type. they will start to exhibit traits of a different type and will start to look like that other type. So as an example, type 1 has an arrow pointing towards type 7, and type 4 has an arrow pointing towards type 1. And so what this means is that the type 1 will start to look more like the 7 and will start to exhibit behaviors and traits of the type 7 when the type 1 is experiencing growth or integration. And the type 1 will look more like a 4 when the 1 is in times of stress or is experiencing disintegration. And similarly, the type 4 will look like the type 1 when the type 4 is in periods of growth or integration, healthy periods. And type 4 will look more like the type 2 in times of stress or disintegration. And I also wanted to touch on a sort of more advanced topic within the Enneagram system. So there's 3 sets of groups in the Enneagram, and each of them has one type in each of the 3 triads. And the names of the 3 groups are the Hornevian Groups, the Harmonic Groups, and the Harmony or Object Relation Groups. And I wanted to talk about these 3 groups because they can help to confirm what a person's type is. If you look at the different characteristics of the type that you believe you are, you believe that the person you're trying to type is, you can look at these 3 different groups to sort of confirm, or maybe it'll tell you that the type you thought you were or the person you're typing was is incorrect. So that's why I want to go over this. And it can really help for narrowing down what type a person is as well. And first we have the Hornevian groups. The 3 Hornevian groups are compliant or dutiful, withdrawn, and assertive or aggressive. The compliant or dutiful group is comprised of types 1, 2, and 6. And these types move towards people to earn what they want. For type 1, what they want is autonomy. For type 2, attention. And for type 6, security. The pros of this group is that they're committed, hardworking, sacrificial, and responsible. The cons is they have a hard time relaxing. They have a tendency to feel superior. The withdrawn group is comprised of types 4, 5, and 9. And the withdrawn group moves away from people to get what they want. And for 4s, what they want is attention. For 5s, security. And for 9s, autonomy. The pros of the withdrawn group is that they're introspective, imaginative, and not attention-seeking. Now, there's a little bit of a contradiction there because 4 does move away from people to seek attention, but what's implied there is they're not actively attention-seeking. And normally they tend to move away from attention, but the underlying intention for 4 is to seek attention by moving away from people. The cons for these 3 is that they have a hard time in groups and they have a hard time taking charge. And then finally, the assertive group is comprised of types 3, 7, and 8, and they're also often referred to as the aggressive group. These 3 will move against people in times of conflict. 3s do this to achieve attention, 7s to achieve security, and 8s for autonomy. And the pros of these 3 are that they're independent, assertive, and energetic. The cons is that they may be demanding and have a hard time following through on projects. So you might have noticed that in each of these 3 groups, each of the 3 types has their own method of achieving either autonomy, attention, and security. It's just that in each group they have a different way to achieve that end. And then the next set of groups is called the Harmonic Groups. And the 3 groups in this category are the Positive Outlook Group, the Competency Group, and the Reactive or Emotional Realness Group. The Positive Outlook Group is comprised of types 2, 7, and 9, and they have a positive outlook when faced with disappointment and or conflict. Type 2s will emphasize their own positive self-image, avoid their own needs and disappointment, and will emphasize others' needs and neglect their own. Type 7s emphasize positive experiences in the environment, avoid their own pain, and emphasize their own needs and are easily burdened by other people's needs. Type 9s emphasize positive qualities of others in the environment. They often avoid problems with loved ones, their environment, and their own lack of development, and they have problems with their own needs and the needs of others. The Competency Group is comprised of types 1, 3, and 5. And the Competency Group focuses on competency when faced with disappointment and or conflict. The way the type 1 does this is by emphasizing being competent by being correct and sensible. They repress and deny feelings instead of channeling them into activity, and they want to follow the system and can get upset with others who do not do that. The type 3 emphasizes being competent by being efficient and outstanding. They repress feelings and focus on tasks, and they want to work within the system but also have little patience for rules. The type 5 emphasizes being competent by being an expert and having information. They detach from feelings and remain cerebral. and they reject the system and want to work on their own. The reactive group, which is also often referred to as the emotional realness group, is comprised of types 4, 6, and 8. These types have strong reactions when faced with disappointment and or conflict. For 4s, they withdraw and seek a supporter or someone who will understand them. They fear abandonment and that they won't have enough support to find themselves. They deal with others by keeping them interested through limited access or playing hard to get. Type 6s assess people and situations and seek independence and support, or someone to rely on but still wanting to be the strong one. They fear abandonment and being without support, and they fear becoming too dependent on others. They deal with others by being committed and reliable and staying engaged by being defensive. Type 8 openly expresses anger and seeks independence. They fear being controlled, dominated, and vulnerable, and they deal with others by keeping their guard up and toughening themselves against pain. And the last category is called Harmony Groups, or Object Relation Groups. In this category essentially indicates how people handle relationships between other people as well as their environment. First, we have the Idealist, or Frustration Group. That's types 4, 7, and 1. And these types have an idea how the world around them should be, and they become frustrated when the world is not that way. Type 1s want an ideal world based on their own internal standards and become frustrated when the world fails to meet those standards. They have lost an appreciation for diversity in life. Type 4s want an ideal world which nothing important or significant is missing, and they become frustrated when the world lacks in certain areas. They have lost an appreciation for the wholeness of what is actually there. And Type 7 wants an ideal world free of suffering and pain, and they become frustrated when faced with pain or suffering, and they run to something new or positive. They have lost an appreciation for living in the wholeness of a moment. The Relationist or Rejection Group is comprised of types 2, 5, and 8. They relate to the world through connection to others and try to avoid rejection by providing necessary functions. The type 2 relates to the world by moving towards others and providing support and care, and have lost their way to manifesting altruistic love and being in the natural flow of giving and receiving. Type 5 relates to the world by moving away from others and providing reason and perspective. They have lost their way to manifesting higher wisdom and being in the natural flow of life energy. Type 8 relates to the world by asserting to others their strength and protections, and they have lost their way to manifesting innocent perspective and natural assertive action without personal agenda. And finally, the last group is Pragmatist or Attachment Group, and this includes types 3, 6, and 9. These types seek their own place in the world and attach to what makes that work for them pragmatically. 3s seek a sustaining place and attach to what keeps them recognized. They have lost knowing that being can manifest in day-to-day living. Type 6 seeks a secure place to attach to what keeps them stable. They have lost faith that knowing the quality of being can manifest enough security in day-to-day living. And Type 9 seeks a comfortable place and attach to what keeps them conflict-free. They have lost the quality of true love of themselves. All of the descriptions of these 3 categories of groups, the Hornevian Groups, Harmonic Groups, and Harmony or Object Relation Groups, these are all sourced from EnneagramExplained.com. And by the way, there are tests that you can take, online tests that you can take to determine your type, but I personally am very against that. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a test to see what your type might be, but I find that they're generally very, very inaccurate because people, depending on their mood, what they're going through on that day, they might test one way, and then the next day they might test completely differently. And it's just not a very accurate way of testing, in my opinion. So I think learning more about the types and learning as much as you can about the types and the differences and what to look for is the best way of determining what your type is or what someone else's type is. So that's how I would recommend going about typing yourself or others. All right, so that's all I have for this part 2 Enneagram video. Of course, this video was going more in depth into the Enneagram as opposed to the intro video I did previously. Even with all of the content I went over in this video, there's still a lot to uncover with the Enneagram. Although I will say that this video did get pretty in depth, and really getting more into the Enneagram would be getting into really the deep depths of it and the very technical aspects of it. So that's something that I might do in the future, but it's probably not a video I'm going to make in the near future. But again, Let me know if you guys have any ideas of what kind of videos you want me to do next. Of course, my channel is going to be within the Myers-Briggs or Enneagram personality type systems, or there's a few other systems that maybe I could also talk about, but just let me know if you guys have any ideas, if you want me to go more in depth into a certain type or a certain category of types, either Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, 8 cognitive functions, MBTI system. Just let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the next video.